Welcome to the Dark Nook Monster Shop. I decided to make Smurfette, but I wanted a Smurfette who makes you ask the question, what if 𝐃𝐀𝐑𝐊 was right? What if Smurfs were actually horrid little creatures? For this one, I'm going back to polymer clay, and I start with an armature. I like to use this green garden wire for small projects like this. It's cheap, and if you twist it, it has just the right level of firmness. I add foil to bulk out the body shape. Then I cover the foil with masking tape. I find this really cuts down on the number of cracks and air bubbles that form during baking, and most clay sticks to masking tape pretty well. I imagine this Smurfette as a little goblin-like creature, built kind of like a tiny ape. So I want big shoulders and arms, but tiny little legs. So I add clay and build up those areas. Then I blend and smooth that clay. Now it's time for some fingers. I smush little sausages of clay onto the hand and coax them out into more finger-like fingers. Smurfette only has 3 fingers in the cartoon, and I'm operating on the assumption that the cartoon was anatomically accurate, but just sweetened up for audiences. Disneyfied, if you will. If you're still watching, thanks for checking out my video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I'd appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Now, the other hand, I want to be clenching a Smurf shank. So I'm going to sculpt it around a little bit of wooden dowel that I'll remove later and replace with the Smurf shank. So I shape out the fingers, then brush it with 99% alcohol to smooth it out. Then it's on to the fingernails. I use a spatula tool to make the nails, and then a loop tool to add some wrinkles and detail to the hand. Then I make her little Smurf shoes, which are really just lumps of clay that give me an excuse not to do any detail on the toes or feet. Just a few folds and wrinkles and some texture that suggests that this is probably made from some rat's skin or something like that. And we're all done. I shape out the head and then wrap it in clay. I smooth that out a bit and start adding clay to build up the brow. I start to rough out the basic shape of the mouth and the cheeks and the eyes. The eyes. Wait a second. If the cartoon is accurate, Smurfette only has one eye. The Smurfs are all cyclopses. I've never realized it before, but the Smurfs only have one eye. So now I have to make this thing with one big eye and 2 pupils. Or maybe not 2 pupils. Maybe it just looks like 2 pupils, because it's one of those creepy sideways goat eye pupils. I shape out the gums and start poking holes for teeth. I pre-baked a bunch of sharp little fangs, and I start adding them into the holes and then building up the gums around them. I smooth out the clay with a ball stylus and then brush it with alcohol. I also pre-baked a big cyclops eyeball, which I pop into place. Pre-baking the eye makes it much easier to sculpt around. I add more clay around Smurfette's eye and blend it in. I finish up the teeth, and now she needs a nose. Smurfette's nose is a little upturned sausage with 2 tiny nostrils. I start shaping the lips and the cheeks. I'm kind of getting an Ursula vibe from this version of Smurfette. Then on to the little ears. I poke some hearing holes in these flappy ears and then brush them with alcohol too to smooth them out. Then I attach the head and start building up the neck. I add more shape and refine some of the details. Then a quick bake and it's time to make Smurfette's dress. I roll out some thin clay on my pasta roller and bunch it up like fabric. Then I attach it to the body and cut it to fit. I cut 2 little strips off the rolled out clay to make the shoulder straps. Then I blend in the seams to make them look like wrinkles. I smooth and texture the dress around the shape of the body. I add a couple of buttons and then one last alcohol smoothing before another trip into the oven. While that cooks, time for the Smurf shank. I want this to look like a broken utility blade tip that's been made into a Smurf weapon. I cut out the blade shape and then fold a strip of clay over that to form the handle. I add detail to make it look like it's wrapped in string or maybe rubber bands. Then I add some texture using the knurled grip on my sculpting tool. And yes, that is the proper term for that, knurling. Time for hair! Now I want this hair to be bright yellow. So how am I going to paint this thing with all the dark base coats and blue base coats without messing up the yellow hair? So I had to make it removable. I added Mod Podge to yellow paint and dipped this string into the mix and then set bits aside to dry, but just long enough so that the outside top edge was dry but the bottoms were still wet. Then I started adding those bits to Smurfette's head. I shape out the hair using bits of string, then cover over the thin spots with overlapping layers of hair. Then, once I like the shape, I paint more Mod Podge over the top to kind of seal it all together as one piece. Now I let that dry long enough for it to be dry on both sides, then I peel it off the head and set it aside, like so. And now it's time to paint. I start with a black base coat and many layers of blue to get that nice deep blue color I want. I add some purple low tones and paint the dress and shoes in big eyeball white. Then I start adding some grimy yellows and browns to dirty up the dress and the shoes. Then some pink to the mouth and lips. I also put some pink around the eye. Then I whiten up the teeth. I use the same grimy colors that I used on the dress for the teeth. I finish off the body with a little bit of dry brushing just to bring out the detail. And then I paint the creepy goat pupil in the eye. After that I coat the eye and the mouth and the nails with gloss Mod Podge. I paint the Smurf shank with metallic silver. Once all the paint on Smurfette is dry, it's time to glue the hair on. I put a little Mod Podge on the underside of the hair and then just press it into place. And I decided to make Smurfette's hat out of foam clay, so I could just shape it and smush it into the hair. Then I added a few folds and wrinkles and let it dry. And after that it was just a matter of a few dirty brown washes and we're done. And on to the beauty shots. Thanks again for checking out my video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Or check out one of these other videos that the algorithm thinks is very cool for you to check out right here, over on the side over here. It thinks you should see this. You'll probably like it.